Welcome, everyone. I'm speaking today with Dana McCauley. Dana is the CEO of the Canadian Food Innovation Network. We'll call them CFIN throughout this discussion. CFIN is a national organization in Canada that's really looking to, stimulate innovation across the Canadian food sector. Just as an aside, if you're anything like me, you spent most of your life never putting food and technology together. And what I've learned is that it's an incredibly innovative space. We can all learn a lot from, no matter what business you're trying to build and where you are across the world. And that's just a couple of things I hope we will dig into today. So I've known Dana for a number of years, from a couple of previous lives. She's had such a fascinating career. She's an innovator and visionary in every sense of the word. She's led marketing organizations. She's been an entrepreneur. She's worked in academia, bridging the gap between these amazing new ideas and putting them into practice to solve problems. And she's been a spokesperson and an on-air judge for a reality TV series.
Yes.
Welcome, Dana. That's a lot.
Yeah, your memory's better than mine.
Have you ever done, in preparation for this conversation, you and I have worked pretty closely together for a few years, and have you ever actually just gone back with people that you work shoulder to shoulder with every day and just gone back to their LinkedIn and be like, oh my God, I had no idea, or I knew that, but I forgot about that? That's exactly the experience I had last night when I was going through your LinkedIn. I'm like, oh my God, I forgot she was a celebrity.
Yes. Well, I was always like a Z-list celebrity at best, and it was, over 10 years ago since I quit doing, TV on a regular basis and radio on a regular basis. So here I am, just doing the CFIN thing day to day now. It's a big job. There's not a lot of room for other things.
Well, yeah, for sure. And so in my intro, I alluded a bit to the fact that I really didn't know much about the Canadian food innovation sector before we crossed paths. What do you think people knew? Oh, well, first of all, I'm wondering, is that new to me, or is that something you hear a lot?
No, I think most people, when they think about innovation in food, they think about new flavors, like, oh, yuzu's big this year, or what have you. And we were so, it's easy to take food for granted because it is literally part of our everyday lives many times a day. And it changes in step with us and with our lifestyles, and it's consumer driven, right? So the marketplace is responding to what you and I want to put in our carts. And because of that, it feels very natural, and you don't really appreciate that. Oh, wow, think back to what the grocery store looked like when you used to shop with your mom, sitting in the cart, and how the store was different and the shopping experience was different, and how the way the food got to the store was different and where it came from was different. We just move with it. It's almost like, in your mind's eye, if you're like me, the picture of yourself that you have is still, in your 20s, but then you look in the mirror and you go, oh my gosh, I'm in my 50s, and it's a little bit the same.
Yeah, interesting. I'm gonna have to soak on that one a little bit. I love that. If we think about, so what is when you have these conversations with people from outside of the industry, what is the one thing, I guess, that you wish people knew more about in terms of the food? We call it, or you call it, food tech. So we might even spend a second and just define what that means to people, because we'll probably be throwing around that term fairly loosely today. But so let's define that. And I'm curious what you kind of wish people appreciated more about that space.
Yeah, I wish that people appreciated that the people who run food businesses in Canada, whether they're restaurants or food processors or even, grocery stores, are just people like all of us, and they all want, generally speaking, the same things. A lot of the media coverage of the food industry, particularly the last few months, has painted the manufacturers shrinkflation. They're making the packages smaller so that they can make more money, and grocers as greedy, and it's all very complex, very interwoven, and there might be some people out there who are like Dr. Evil, who are like, woohoo, how can I make $1 million? But most people in the food business are just like you and me. They're doing their best. A lot of them are entrepreneurs. out of the almost 8,000 small and medium-sized enterprises in the food processing sector, like the vast majority, I won't give you a percentage because I'm not confident in the number, but plus 70% of them have less than 50 employees. These are small businesses. These are people who are just doing what they can to bring a product that they think you're going to like and you're going to want to buy to market, and do it in a way that helps them to have a good life themselves. So I think that that's also a good leaping off point for understanding why technology is so important, because it helps those companies to be more competitive, to have more data, to have more insight, to do things more quickly, and hopefully to keep prices low, and it's really interesting because I think people are a little bit misinformed about how the food business, or who works in the food business, and why they're there.
Interesting. Why do you think that is, that maybe the food industry seems to get a disproportionate amount of, ire?
Yeah, I think some of it is spillover. We live next to a massive country which has some of the biggest food companies in the world. There have been many, many books written about how the food industry is trying to trick us into eating sugar and this and that and the other thing. A lot of those books are hyperbolic and take something that probably started out as somebody saying, oh, people want it to be sweeter, and then over a course of a number of years, the R&D department goes, well, the only way to give them this much sugar is to use a cheaper ingredient, and high fructose corn syrup gets incorporated, et cetera. So I'm not sure that those are truthful tomes either, but I think they paint a picture of a food industry that doesn't really reflect Canada's food industry.
Interesting. So, thinking about a lot of the people that might be listening today, coming back to CFIN specifically, I was thinking about our work together, and a lot of our people listening might be entrepreneurs that are maybe fall into some of the buckets that you've just described there, or revenue leaders that are looking to get from 5 to 10 million, or 10 million to 50, or even more. CFIN has been around for 2-3 years or so, and you've got up to, I think, is it 4,000 members already in less than 2 years?
Just under.
I'm wondering, what have you learned about getting those first users that might apply to some of the other virtually?
It's really interesting, your question. I really appreciate your question. Sorry I spoke over you there, but I'm excited to answer it. We are a startup. The Canadian Food Innovation Network, like you said, April 2021, became a thing. And we've learned a lot, the way all startups do, about our customer. And our customer is somebody who's working in food innovation in the food industry, and that's big. So it's a very diverse group with a lot of, sub categories within it. And what we have learned is that the food business changes really fast. It changes in step with what's happening in the news. War in Ukraine. Oh, that means less aluminum, less sunflower oil. Interest rate up a half point. Oh my gosh, all of a sudden, all this capital just got, much more expensive. So what we've learned is that by having this big membership, we have this amazing opportunity to have almost real-time insight into what the food industry needs. And that means that we've been able to give them the information they need at the right time. So for instance, when I started at CFIN in August of 2021 as employee number 2, I thought that talking about cellular agriculture and, precision fermentation, I thought the reality of that business to the Canadian economy was 5 years out. Well, a year later, we were seeing incredible activity and incredible growth among food startups, mostly run by scientists, either people from chemistry, biology, computer science and engineering, these folks, just going into the food business and transferring this amazing knowledge they have from their studies into solving protein problems for the globe. And we were, tasked with getting all the information out there to unpuzzle this whole new portion of the food sector for our membership so that they could have all the facts and make decisions that made sense for their business. So we have to listen all the time. We're there to support the food industry, not tell them what to do. And that requires a lot of two-way communication, us asking good questions and folks giving us their answers. And once we get those conversations going, it's amazing how even in this huge country of Canada, we can have these amazing collisions where people who want to adopt technology and people who are eager to play around with technology can unite and do these great projects. We've already funded over 51 projects. We've put $13 million into helping to solve the problems that are facing people who are running food businesses. And some of the outcomes are just like so inspiring. It's so exciting, and so I've just learned that there's unlimited creativity in Canada and a real capacity for collaboration that you might not imagine would exist in such a competitive economy.
Yeah. So interesting. You said a couple of things there that I wanted to, a couple of threads to pull on, and you mentioned collisions.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you've got this incredibly complex ecosystem. You mentioned a lot of the variables there, and I imagine these small to medium-sized businesses trying to figure out how to introduce some innovation that makes them less susceptible, or at least to manage all these changing variables that impact their supply chain and their pricing and consumer preferences, etc. So how do you create a community that makes people feel included, makes them feel like they belong, but also helps them navigate what is a really complex thing, and they've got to find the one part of that conversation or that one collision that is going to help them address the problems that they have today?
Well, it's a big question and a big task, and as you know, because you've been helping us to do our research, we aren't there yet, and we never will be. This is, if you are a Simon Sinek fan, what we're doing is the ultimate infinite game. It's always going to be changing. Back to my example at the beginning of how we take change in the food business for granted because it's with us all the time. So I don't think we'll ever be finished helping the industry, but we have created an online community called Yodel. The logo looks like a whole bunch of mountains stacked on top of each other, and that's intentional because we knew that the food business was very fragmented. People didn't know how to find each other, how to find information. So we're trying to bring it together in an online space where there's discussions and people saying, hey, I need this, oh, hey, I have that, and talking about big issues as well. Lots of really good discussion posts. And that's one piece of it. But then we also have the human touch in the form of our regional innovation directors. So to really understand people's problems and their circumstances, you need in-market insight. So I have a team of people across the country who work within their markets to understand what's going on, who the players are, what they're trying to do. And then they work together as a group to also, form connections and help people to unpuzzle their problems. And through those conversations, we've learned a lot about the pain points that face our various different kinds of members. So we're turning Yodel into, basically, we hope eventually a one-stop problem-solving shop. So we've already launched a funding finder, which is a tool that businesses who work with food companies or who are food companies can put in all their info and find out what funding is available to them in Canada today. We are working on a resource finder and a career hub so that we can get more people into food innovation. Because believe it or not, a lot of people who are going into engineering and computer science don't think about a career in food. But guess what? The industry needs them desperately. So we want to help to facilitate the capacity to have more growth, because if you adopt technology, you have to be able to run technology, fix technology, evolve your technology. So you need different skills than just a great palate and an ability to, endure the heat of the oven when you're pulling the cookies out.
Yeah, and so much of what you're talking about, Dana, is just so universal, I think, to a lot of companies starting out trying to get that traction. And the point, it's a really interesting pivot point that CFIN's at, that every business ends up at. It's because at the beginning, you're just gobbling up users and customers. Like, let's talk to them, let's engage them, let's figure out what we're learning, let's determine that product market fit. But at some point, you've got to realize that, okay, now we've got enough mass that we can create segments of it, particularly challenge or topics of interest or segments of that larger population, because we can't keep messaging to everybody as if they all care about the same things, and they don't. So I'd love to hear about how you scale that. And you also mentioned the region innovation directors, which is such this mix of completely scalable technology where these conversations happen, but the importance of introducing the human touch and
people are important.
Finding that balance is just so important. I'd love to get your thoughts on how you're trying to figure that out.
Yeah, well, the segmenting piece, it's not that different. In fact, it's much less precise than the Harry Potter sorting hat, but because different food businesses and different technology companies can do many different things. Mm. But sorting people out against what they care about has been our first step. So asking our members to self-identify the topics that are of interest to them, so that we can, one, guide our limited resources into, going after the biggest topics at the beginning. So that's that piece. But the regional innovation directors, I'm so glad that you find that part interesting as well, because it's, it seems old school that you need a person. But you know what? People, and this is the problem with AI at this particular point as well, it can do great research and it can synthesize research, but it can't create. It can't have a new idea. People can. And so my regional innovation directors were hired very strategically. They all have very different skill sets. We have a food scientist, we have a brand expert, we have an economist, we have somebody who is an expert in new venture creation. And these folks all can see a problem from its many different sides, and together they just have an exponential, we call them the Power Rangers, because they just are able to pathfind and problem solve in ways that no peer group could do. Peer groups are super important, and CFIN's investing a lot into bringing innovators together so that they can learn from one another and problem solve together. But then it's very helpful at a certain point in that process to then have somebody from the outside come in and look at everything and say, what did you think of? And that's often the tipping point for real innovation, right? Is that fresh insight. And that requires people.
Yeah, interesting. You're right about the regional innovations directors. I remember I think just the testament to the approach you took on filling this team. So it's each region across Canada, which is a giant place, and different regions have the different challenges. So hiring in-market specialists that can create, augment the online community and build those connections. Mm-hmm. But the way you went about it, as you talked about the diversity of the team, like you went about purposely and created like a super unicorn that's got all these different perspectives that you could never possibly find in one head. No. And so they can specialize in their region, but you put them together and they've got an incredibly unique skill set that you wouldn't find. It's just a really,
and the really
cool
surprising part, like it was a risk to do that. And I had a literal matrix where I had like the skills that I wanted. And as I hired these people, I would put their name in under the skill set. And I was like, oh, this could go so badly. They could really clash. They might hate each other because, if you go out to hire a sales team or a marketing team, you get people who have common experiences, common language, common acronyms even. And all of a sudden I had, 5 very different people with very different perspectives. Miraculously, they seem to get along and work together extremely well. I think I won the lotto there, though. I think it could have gone terribly wrong.
Yeah, they're an incredible group. One of the things, so we haven't quite talked about this yet, but I'd love to get your perspective. We talked about getting your first customers. Now you're looking forward to going, we've got, 4,000 members, and now we're going to go from 4,000 to 40,000, whatever that ambitious goal is. What are the things that you and CFIN and the team are thinking about in recognizing that what's gotten us here isn't going to get us to the next stage? That's something that every entrepreneur and
Totally.
running growing companies has to figure out.
Well, and it's interesting because some businesses, like manufacturing, the more customers you have, the more units you make, the more efficient your business becomes. You get contribution margin. If you run your factory 8 hours a day, that's okay. You can maybe make money. You run your factory 16 hours a day. Whoa, every additional sale goes right to profit, right? And if you do it 24 hours a day, you're really cooking along. But as we get more members, we're more like a restaurant. The more people who come in, the more seats you need, the more cooks you need, the more this, the more that. So our big scaling problem when it comes to adding more members is just making sure that the user experience and the service stays really top notch and improves. So like every other business, I'm a not-for-profit funded with, taxpayer dollars by the Canadian government. They, of course, expect us to be very, very lean, and they should, as a taxpayer, I'm glad they do. So I can't just double, triple, quadruple my staff. And that would add a whole bunch of complexity too that we're not, ready for. So technology for us is going to have to take care of those needs that people have in common, and we're going to need to use our know-how and our creativity and technology to create ways to identify people who have problems and needs that aren't solvable by the technologies we build, and then to pull them out of the system, give them what they need, get them going, and then move on to the next. Because scaling a membership-based business is really difficult. Like the regional innovation directors with 4,000 members all work really hard. So when we get to 40,000 members, what do they need supports for them so they can keep doing high value work and having impact, and don't just devolve into answering the same question over and over again each day. So we have a same problem that so many other businesses that are on the verge of growth have.
Yeah, and finding technology to solve that, for lack of a better term, lower value, reactive, tactical work.
More common.
Allow the RIDs to focus on the strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's difficult because the technology doesn't exist. We're doing something that hasn't been done before. So, yes, our CRM system is out of the box, but the tools that we have on Yodel, we have to find partners and build them, and then we have to make them work together. And so we're becoming integration specialists. My degree is in English literature, and I'm trained as a chef. And here I am. I'm spending time, thinking about how we're going to clean data, and so that we can have seamless integration. And it's it's great because I'm learning and I'm evolving every day with the support of my team, who basically give me a university education every day.
Yeah, that's amazing. So many threads I'd love to pull on, Dana. I want to be respectful of your time. This has been so good. We're going to have a follow-up conversation. The
Anytime.
one, I've got just a closing question that I've asked a couple of people and I've learned a lot from. I know you're an avid reader. What is the one book that's made the biggest difference in your life, whether it's professional or personal or whatever?
Yeah, on the personal side, it would be hard to pick just one. But professionally, I think the book that made what I do well naturally more meaningful and that I go back to the most often is Starts with Why. Because, branding is, you can reduce it down to, pick some core attributes and yada yada, find a target market. But it really is true. Like lots of people have tried to do what the Canadian Food Innovation Network is doing. They've tried to, support industry, to help them to come together, et cetera, et cetera. But they haven't necessarily taken that Starts with Why approach where they really say, everything is going to have this unifying quality, and that's going to be common to all of our activity, and it's going to be meaningful. Like having a just cause is so much more impactful and powerful than having a mission and vision statement. And so that's I would say that Starts with Why is the book that changed the way I thought about developing products and made me start thinking about them as part of brands and tribes and all those words we've all heard that feel cliche right now, but I think are actually cliche because they're really true. And it's hard to stick to your why when the going gets tough and you're very busy. But if you're very clear about it and communicate it to your whole team and make it part of your practice to come back to it, it really works.
Yeah, that's amazing. I can't imagine a better thought to close it off on there, Dana. This has been just as much fun as I thought it would be. I've been looking forward to this for a long time. So thanks for doing this.
It was a pleasure. I was really happy that you asked me.
Awesome.